Are you looking for the perfect bracelet for a loved one? Would your man be interested in a personalized keyring from his children? Are you looking for the best priced jewelry, whether it be a necklace, ring, earrings, bangle, or even more? Look no further than Crafted Arts. Crafted Arts is a local business based in Barry within the Vale of Glamorgan, and they have a range of all the perfect items you need. If it's for the perfect gift for an anniversary, or maybe it's for someone's birthday, maybe something for Christmas, or you wanted to give someone that perfect gift that will last a long time, Crafted Arts is the business for you. If you want to know more or see what they have in stock, then you can visit them locally at 29 High Street, Barry, Vale of Glamorgan, CF627EB, or you can go onto their website at www.craftedarts.co.uk. You could even email them at info@craftedarts.co.uk, or maybe just give them a call at 07789 94248. Trust me, it's worth it for the perfect gift. The best thing about Creative Space is that we don't just want to encourage people in being creative in TV, film, or even theatre. We also want you to be creative in a variety of other things as well. So do you want to have experience in making jewelry? Do you want to pick up a hobby but do not know what to take or where to start? Then look no further than the Vale Jewelry Workshops. Vale Jewelry Workshops provides the best experience in teaching you how to make the best sterling silver jewelry. They will help you make a range of silverware, including rings, bracelets, and many more pieces. You will learn the basic silversmith skills such as soldering, texturing, shaping, and lots more. Not only do the workshops provide the experience for adults, it also provides the best experience and fun for children as well. So if you want to learn on how to make sterling silver jewelry, and if you're very interested, go onto their website at www.valegewelryworkshops.co.uk or get in touch with them via email at info@valegewelryworkshops.co.uk, or even phone them at 07789 794248. Hello people, my name is Rhys Deans of Creative Space Podcast. How is everyone doing today? On this particular episode, I had to go back home to Wales. I had to get a Welsh guest on the show. So going back down to the roots, when I first started doing this podcast, the first three guests that were on the show were Ian Rees, Owen Thomas and Patrick Jones. What did they have all in common? Being Welsh, being proud Welshmen, and I had to go back down my route and bring on another Welsh guest, and I thought, who would be a great Welsh guest? Now, I wanted Michael Sheen, but Michael Sheen wasn't available. I tried everyone, but then I finally got one of my all-time favourite Welshmen actually, to come on the show to talk about his career, especially the likes of him developing the Fireman Sam theme music, the Super Ted, being in radio, all sorts of things and all sorts of stories. It's Maldwyn Pope. The guy's voice is absolutely, as a singer, absolutely fantastic, but when you listen to him, when you speak to him, that man's voice is as warm as hot. It's like a warm cup of tea, hot milk, whatever. It's so smooth and so delicate. It's absolutely beautiful. The man is a treasure. He is an absolute gent. That's all I can say about it. So without further ado, Rhys, shut up. Just get on with the podcast. I will, guys. It's me and Mal Pope on Creative Space Podcast. I think one of the reasons why I wanted you, Mal, on the podcast is not because of Fireman Sam, which we'll get down to later on, but I've heard you wrote musicals, and I really wanted, I've got all questions lined up, and it's all coming from the 70s all the way to the present day, but I really want to get down to Amazing Grace for a moment, because the reason why I want to talk about Amazing Grace is because it was correct me if I'm wrong, the 1904 Welsh revival, and there was something about you with musicals that you want to expand on Welsh history, and you did a tour with Amazing Grace, and I read somewhere that you did it at the Wales Millennium Centre. And at the Wales Millennium Centre, it was the first ever Welsh
Yeah.
show to ever have at the Wales Millennium Centre, and it had a standing ovation. Um, I just wanted to know what was the thought process of doing musicals, especially for this particular topic of the 1904 Welsh revival.
Yeah. Well, as usual, when starting on a massive project like that, it usually comes from being unemployed. Because I have four children, and broadcasting was possibly my bread and butter for a number of years, radio and TV. And then it stops. It happens to us all, and it's a shock when it first happens. To be honest, it hurts, and you think, "Oh, what am I going to do?" And obviously, music had always been my first love, and it'll be my last, as John Miles once said. And I was actually walking just down the road from the house here, and I thought, I'm going to write a musical. I'm going to write a musical about the Welsh revival, and I've called someone because this was like a year before maybe the centenary of the Welsh revival, so it was like 2003. And I said, I'm going to write a musical. Now that was it. And once you say something out loud, become accountable for your words. And I had always thought about, if you're going to write a musical about Wales, then there's plenty of material, within our history if you're going to do Irish ones, you can have Irish dancing, you have fiddles. If you do Scottish, it's going to have bagpipes. If you're going to do a Welsh musical, it's going to have hymns, because that's our musical tradition. And I just started. So I didn't go to college to learn how to write musicals, but I wrote like an A4 sheet of ideas, and I spoke to the Grand Theatre. Grand Theatre said, we're working quite a lot with a guy called Michael Bogdanov. Michael was an Olivia Award-winning director. I mean, an amazing character. Sadly, he's no longer with us.
Mm.
And he called me, and he said, "What, why you want to do this?" And I think I've got some ideas. And he said, "No, well, no, it's not going to be possible for the centenary. What about 2005?" And it was as easy and as difficult as that to get on the road with it. And so I just started writing. I did an awful lot of research. So when I do a project, I become obsessed. So I became obsessed with Evan Roberts, a 26-year-old ex-miner from Lacher, who told his family and friends that he'd met the Almighty in his bedroom in Lacher every night, spoke to him as a man speaks to another man for 3 or 4 hours at a time for 3 or 4 months, and that God had personally commissioned Evan Roberts to lead a worldwide revival from Lacher. Well, if one of your mates told you that now, you'd think he was crackers, and that's what his family thought. But he held a little meeting. It was on October the 30th, 1904, in the schoolroom in Mariah in Lacher. 8 people turned up. One of them was a little girl. But by the end of the week, the chapel was full, and then the whole of Wales. And the Western Mail said, for 18 months, Evan Roberts had the whole of Wales in the palm of his hand. And it was a musical revival. So they had singers, they had, so it was, the music sort of set itself, although I tried to give a modern twist to it. So in a long answer, that was the reason. I was broke. I needed to find a way to make a living, and I just thought, I'm going to write a musical. And that's sort of been the way that I've done a lot of projects in my life. Necessity is the mother of invention.
Mm. And when you had that moment at the Wales Millennium Centre, you had it in various. Obviously, you had it at the Swansea Grand, you had it at the Sherman Theatre, you had it in so many places. But the Wales Millennium Centre has always been. It's like, for me, I mean, because I'm a playwright myself, and I've always dreamed of one day I'll probably have one of my plays or one of my. If I ever write a musical, even though I can't write music to save my lives, but I'm going to do it one day. It's always been the target for, I think, a young, hungry, Welsh talent, just to have that.
Yeah.
And when you had the musical at the Wales Millennium Centre, and there was this big standing ovation, how did that feel for you? Or, I mean, if I don't know if you saw the standing ovations, the best
Yeah, well,
reception.
yeah, it was amazing because the band was on stage, and I was the musical director, or musical diplomat, as I always used to say, when you do musicals. And we the first tour was very successful. We did Swansea Grand. I remember turning up at the stage door, and Tina was on the door, said, "We've done it." And I said, "What do you mean we've done it?" She said, "We sold over £100,000 worth of tickets for the Grand Theatre." And it was just like, wow, everybody felt a part of it. And so the first tour ended in 2005, and we immediately rebooked. And instead of doing the Sherman in Cardiff, we did the Wales Millennium Centre, which was a risk. But they went with it. And, we sold out. We were there from the Tuesday to the Saturday. We sold out most nights. And that last performance, I mean, it was an amazing experience, because I think it was the time of there was a lot of rugby going on. Peter Carey, who was the antagonist in the show, a guy called the Reverend Peter Price, based on a real character from Dowlice who hated Evan Roberts in the revival. Maybe he didn't hate him, but he really didn't like him. And so he was singing at the Wales Millennium Stadium at a rugby match, dressed in his outfit on one of the nights, and then you get a taxi back and he does this show. And I know everybody who was a part of that show felt the same way, that we had done something, special for Wales to be the first sort of major Welsh show on the main stage, telling a Welsh story with Welsh actors. And the musical is still there. Maybe people have moved on. Sadly, Michael's no longer with us, but the musical is still there. And maybe the thing is, songs and shows don't die. They're there somewhere or other. They're just waiting for the right time to come back. And it was a remarkable. But what I did find, and the first time I did a tour with Amazing Grace, we ended up must have been in Aberystwyth or Llandudno, and the poppers go off and you walk to the front, because they call me to the front of the stage, take a bow, as I was the writer. And then the next day you go home, and then the day after that, there's nothing. Like there's no phone calls, all that work, you got to start again. And what I realized, the second tour of Amazing Grace, I needed to have the next project well underway so that I wouldn't have that post-tour blues. So I started writing one about Tommy Farr, the boxer. And then that took probably another 18 months later on, again, working with Michael Bogdanov and doing the same sort of theatres around Wales. But they were expensive because they were big shows. A lot of people on stage and a lot of pre-production. And Michael only worked with big budgets. So it was always a difficult thing to get the show up and running and to get people to come and see it from outside of Wales. And we failed in that task of actually getting it to go to other areas. And by that stage, it was too expensive to put back on again.
Because when you mentioned the Tommy Farr musical, obviously it was called Contender. And you did it at, when I was doing the research, it said United Nations building in New York. And I had to read it again to go, the United Nations building? What?
Yeah.
What? So
what we did,
tell us the story.
Yeah, Wales in New York, special weeks of doing the March 1st period. And I went across there with a couple of singers, and we did sort of like, highlights from the show. So the first time we did it in the Sony CBS building, right in the center of New York. And then we were invited by the ambassador, Sir Emyr Jones Parry. He was the UK ambassador. And I remember walking in with the singers, and was smell. I think, what's that smell? They'd made Welsh cakes. And we performed, some of the songs, because the story of Tommy Farr. I mean, the idea with writing these musicals is not to them to be parochial in any sense, but they tell a Welsh story. So Evan Roberts, his story, his narrator is a guy called W.T. Stead, who was a world famous. He was an investigative journalist, a Victorian investigative journalist. In fact, the last time he was seen alive was in the smoking room of the Titanic, because he was going to New York to speak at a peace conference with President Taft. But he gave us his insight into this Welsh story, which then went all around the world. And with Tommy Farr, Tommy starts, in the Rhondda, but he ends up in Yankee Stadium fighting Joe Louis. And then he goes to all, gets involved with the mafia. He's in all the hot spots. He's a star. And it's a worldwide star. It's just, instead of like Rocky's based in Philadelphia, isn't it? Well, Contenders, exactly the same sort of story, but he's a guy from Clydach Vale instead of Philadelphia. So I always wanted to write stories which were Welsh, but which would have an international perspective as well.
Would you ever consider going into writing more musicals in the future? Is that always still an idea or plan in the future for you, Mal?
It's interesting, because I've written about 4 or 5. And they take over your life for years. What I realized was, and you learn these things along the way, we couldn't always raise the money to do a massive, massive musical with 8 people on stage in the band. And it's like, 20 people articulated trucks. So then it was funny, really, because there was a guy in Minneapolis who wanted to take Amazing Grace across mid-America. And we got chatting. And then I said, I looked on his website, and he had a show called Triple Espresso about 3 boys in a coffee shop. And I said, well, actually, I'm writing a musical about 3 girls in a coffee shop. And I sent that on a Friday. On the Monday, I was in Minneapolis. That was in 2007. And instead of doing Amazing Grace, we talked about writing and doing a show called Cappuccino Girls. And what I thought was, if you could do a show with 3 guys on the stage, you could do it with 3 girls, maybe maybe two, so like a cast of 5 rather than a cast of millions. And economically, that takes a lot of the pressure off. And we were going to open up in 2008 in Minneapolis to take over from Triple Espresso. Sadly, the credit crunch hit. He got cold feet, and we ended up coming back and do it in Manchester and then taking it on tour. And then I actually built a little theatre in Swansea High Street called the South Wales Evening Post Theatre. We ran it there for 19 weeks. And so, but it takes an enormous amount of personal energy. It takes, I can't bet the house anymore against. Every time I do it, the house is on the line, and people just don't realize that. If you're going to build a theater from scratch, it costs a lot of money, and the only money I've got is my house. So would I do that again? I think probably what I've done now is I've come to a place where I realize the main thing has to be the main thing, which is my songwriting and performing and making records and making videos for the music. But as I say, the musicals never die. They're always waiting for somebody else to breathe some life into them, and you never know what's around the corner. You never know.
Well, I look forward to what's going to happen around the corner, and I look forward to seeing that. But going back then to how it all began, it was in the 1970s. You sent tapes of songs of yours that you created to BBC One presenter John Peel, and you were invited to come and perform. Tell us about that moment. What was it like for you, and what was it like to get your songs, get your content out there?
Yeah, amazing. It's actually 50 years ago now that I sent the tape. And I got the letter back on May the 28th, 1973. I was just 13 years old. But again, as I look back at it, it seems like magic, but I'd already failed an Opportunity Nooks audition, and I'd already been told by the musical director at HTV Wales that it might be a good idea if I got some guitar lessons. But I suppose at 12, I just kept going. So I made this tape, sent it to John Peel, the letter came back. But, in a way, the naivety of being 12 years old and 13 years old is that it happened every week on Opportunity Knocks. Just before me, Mary Hopkin had been on the TV and signed to Apple Records. So when I went up to London, me and my brothers, we all had new suits. I recorded the songs. It sort of felt like that's what happened on the films, and that's what happened in the musicals. So why wouldn't it happen to me? And then then the call comes through to sign to Elton John's Rocket Record Company, and it sort of felt that that's the way it was going to be. That there's this trajectory to be, for dreams to come true, and they did. For many years, those dreams were just fantastic. Meeting Elton for the first time, staying at his house, training with Watford, making records at Abbey Road, playing with some of the greatest musicians and producers of the 1970s. My producer was a guy called Gus Dudgeon, who produced Space Oddity and all of Elton's records. Then Elton produced me and stuff. So it's really weird now because obviously thinking a lot about 50 years ago, I've got my dad's diary. My dad's no longer with us. My dad kept a diary all through his life and through those years. And it's just so odd, he came with me. The day that I met Elton John for the first time, October the 30th, seems to be an important date I keep on mentioning, 1973. We've been to a couple of studios. My dad says, had a gay old time with Elton and the others. Then he's got Phantom 5 Rolls Royce because at the end of our meeting, we had to get to Paddington Station and Elton said, take the rolls. So we went in the back of this Phantom 5 Rolls Royce. And then my dad says, had a lovely chat with a nun from Newport on the way home. And the next day he says, Mal's out playing football on the lawn. It was just a bizarre, 1 minute I'm with Elton John in this showbiz world, and the next minute I'm back home with my mates playing football on the lawn. So it was bizarre, and it almost feels like another life, if I'm honest. But I'm thinking a lot about it because of the 50 years.
Well, what was he like just to be around Elton John?
He was amazing, and I think you get the feeling. Obviously, he's been through a lot, and he's Elton John. He always has been, for the last 50 years, and that's a different pressure to bear because people will give you anything and everything, and so he can't be normal, and he hasn't been normal for a long time. But he's incredibly generous, as you've seen him with. It was my turn at that stage. He's been, even now with people like Ed Sheeran. He will be very generous with his time and with his support. So for me, and I've just my mum passed away last year, and I've had a box of cassettes. And there's one here now, and it's There we are. That's the cassette that I've just transferred, and it's from 1973. And it's the Radio One Rock show, and it's got Elton talking about signing me. You know, saying Waldron. We did it. We go down to Swansea and did a Huey Green on him, which Huey Green used to run Opportunity Knocks, and he said, "We'll make you a star right here." And then it's got an interview with me and Paul Gambaccini, and you know, so this is all very new. But Elton was lovely. I mean, he did. I used to go and stay at his house. I played Subbuteo football with him. He was really good at bar football, but I beat him at Subbuteo football. He took me training with Watford Football Club, and at this Christmas party, you know, he played at Hammersmith Odeon. We all went back to this place in Covent Garden. All the stars were there, and I went round. Well, I had my autograph book, and when Elton turned up, having arrived from the Hammersmith Odeon, he said, "Have you got your book?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Come on then," and he took me around to meet everybody. You know, so I got Brian Ferry, Mickey Dolenz from the Monkey, Ringo Starr, you know, and they all signed my autograph book. And because Elton was there taking me around, and he was that generous, you know, because he knew how much that meant to me as a 13-year-old, you know, who'd be going back to Swansea, the next day.
I suppose as well, you know, if for someone like Elton John for being so generous and everything, it's gonna be in the back of his mind or somewhere in his mind to say, I was in that guy's position, so I need to share that maybe positivity, maybe, you know, give something back to the future generation of musicians I've got to. And I think that's the way it should be, because I mean, it's like a friend of mine, Mark Jones, you know, he's helping me out with getting a play on, and I said, well, why are you helping me out? And his experience is TV and film. You know, he's done loads with Jerry Anderson's Thunderbirds, Captain Scarlet, and everything. He's never done theatre, and I was like, "Well, why are you doing it?" And he went, "I know you got potential, so I'm trying to give you that push." And now coming later on, I know you're a Swansea man, and I'm not a Cardiff fan. I'm a Barry Town supporter. But the story of Fred Keano winning the FA Cup and everything, it's always stayed in my mind. And I'm thinking that needs to be told, because it's not just the football aspect of it, it's the First World War and his journey and everything. And when you look into it, it's also surreal in some ways to think, oh my God. And in all fairness to Elton John, for you telling that story, I think a lot of people go, I'm not surprised, because Elton John is a legend.
Yeah.
You know,
and the thing is, not everybody is like that. Okay, so that's what makes him more remarkable, and the fact that he's so successful makes it even more remarkable. But the good guys do that because they remember what it was like being on the outside, and people will, you know, I'll forever remember. You know, like I always tell the story about two teachers in my life. I won't mention him, but I to get to university, I needed an A in my computer science exam. This is when computers were the size of a house. Okay, and I remember saying to the teacher, I said, I need to get an A in this exam, and he went, and then he did it again. It made me feel so small. Then there's Peter Bongo Williams, when I was 9 years old, who heard me playing my songs and put me on stage every school assembly he could, and every, you know, and just made me feel fantastic. And that's a difference. You have a choice. How do you want to make people feel? But then going back to your story about Fred Keano and the play that you're writing, you know, we so often see other people's heroes on our screens and on our stages, and that's sort of the reason for pointing to put Evan Roberts on the stage and Tommy Farr, is that we need to celebrate our own legends to give them credence. If you see it on a stage or on a screen, you think, wow, isn't that amazing? I didn't know that story. And so, yeah, Fred Keano needs to, you know, to be recognized in the play.
I think another Welsh icon that will always be recognized, I think you know when I'm going to go with this one. You know, I mean, for me, I'll say this now.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, growing up, it was always Thomas the Tank Engine, Bob the Builder, Postman Pat, and Fireman Sam. And for some reason, Fireman Sam, for me, it was not because of when children grew up watching these programs, it's the fact that maybe it's because, like Tom said, it's a talking train, the adventures and everything, it's so on and so forth. And kids, they don't look at it like that. But for me, I don't know, it was maybe because he was Welsh from Pontypandy.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I can relate to this in some ways. And just tell us the story of the theme tune. I absolutely love the classics. And I don't know about your opinion. Maybe it's because I grew up listening to your music, the introduction to Fireman Sam. But every time I listen to the current one, I'm like,
Mm. You don't
no,
mess with the classic, do you? You don't mess
don't
with it.
mess. No, if it ain't
No.
broke, don't fix
Oh.
it.
So first of all, I should say I was young and I needed the money.
Yeah.
Because I was going to be a rock and roll star. In fact, I'd just done a previous couple of years ago, before that, I'd sung on Super Ted. Um,
Yes.
so the thing was, because obviously S4C had money to make programs, but how do you sell programs worldwide in Welsh? And that was always going to be tricky initially. It's not a problem these days, but back then it was. So they made animated programs instead, because you could translate them, put them in different languages. So I did Super Ted in English and in Welsh with a couple of other singers, and then Fireman Sam. Now I got involved with a couple of lads called Hennigan and Lawson. They're mad professor type musicians, brilliant. And they asked me to sing. So they wrote the music. If I'm honest, they wrote the music and the words. Actually, the words was Robin Lyons, who was in part of Super Ted's team as well. And they asked me to sing it. And I remember I went to a house, probably it's either Penarth or Barry actually, to do a little demo of the song, and they got the gig, and then we did the whole production. And it's one of the things, I'd done Super Ted, that was fine, but Fireman Sam just reached a whole new level, and it was brilliant. The music was fantastic, some great playing on the, like da 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 da. That's the fire engine. That's the siren. That's the opening lines. Fireman Sam is still in bed. They were very clever. Great guitarists. Howell Maggs doing the guitar solo. I did all the backing vocals, and I could do it in Welsh as well, so I was cheap. But even now, on my YouTube channel, I've got a couple of versions of it, and it's by far and away the most watched videos on my YouTube channel. I've got loads of new singles out. Got a #1 in the Heritage charts the last couple of weeks. Nothing compares with Fireman Sam, and maybe it never will. But it was great to be a part of it. And as you say, it's such a lovely program, great characters, and it's at that stage where kids are watching TV with their parents, and it holds a lot of fantastic memories about their childhood. And to be a part of that in people's lives is something I don't take for granted anymore.
Yeah, it was just, I had to look at your YouTube channel, and the most viewed is the longer of Fireman Sam, 700,000 views, and still climbing.
I know, it's bizarre. It's bizarre, and I don't make a penny of it because it's not my copyright. But anyway, just like I'm not bitter. It's just great to be involved, And not a week goes past without an email from somebody anywhere in the world, because the thing is that it got translated into different language. Well, actually, they did subtitles and stuff, but it went to like Algeria, it went to the Middle East, and they didn't have the English version; they used the Welsh version. So millions of people that grew up with Fireman Sam. He's the hero next door.
Yeah. Which, I mean, today, you get a lot of children's TV shows that have had their films, they've had their moments of TV movies or anything. And for some reason, I've always wanted to ask you this. If there was ever to be a Fireman Sam film, not an animated one, a proper live action one,
Yeah.
right? And someone came to you, a film director came to you and said, right, Mal, who would you recommend to play Fireman Sam? And you were put on that spot. Who would you want?
So it's going to be Matthew Rhys, Johan Griffith, or actually maybe he should be Callum. Who was recently in what was Callum in? He was in It's a Sin. He's going to be in the new film.
Oh yeah, he was in the play,
well.
wasn't he? Yeah, he was in the play, wasn't he? From Romeo and Julie, was it? Is that,
yeah. And he was fantastic in Kit Kat Club Cabaret. He's brilliant. I've known him since he was a little boy. In fact, the last musical I did, he was a student. And he was doing some stuff for a thing called Lars, which is like a charity that encourages people to perform. And he was in Mumbles, and I was the host. And I said, "Oh, Callum, look, I've got this show coming up. I'd love you, love to give you a chance." I thought, because he was in the Welsh College Music and Drama, and he was going to like come along, and we were going to give him some expenses and stuff. And he said, "Oh, sorry, I can't do it. I've been offered another job for a TV show," and it was It's a Sin. Does he return my calls anymore? Actually, he does. Fair play. He's a lovely lad, and he's brilliant, and he always was, and he had such character. Would he be Fireman Sam? Well, I think he could be. He could be anything he wants to be.
Yeah. I was always, there was always the four.
Well, it was actually not four. It was always the three main ones I always thought of, and that's no disrespect to Michael Sheen. I never
Oh
thought
no.
of him, but it was always Matthew Rhys, Johan
Mm.
Griffith, or Luke Evans.
Oh
I
yeah.
was like, out of those three, I just can't see anyone else playing Fireman Sam, and it has to. And I was having a chat with my friend Mark about this, and we had a chat about Fireman Sam, and he said, "Oh, if you were given an opportunity, would you do it?" I was like, "Of course I would. It's Fireman bloody Sam." I said, but on three conditions.
Yeah.
I said, if I was to ever make it, I said it's got to be a Welsh actor playing Fireman Sam. It's got to be Welsh orientated. I said at the very end of the film, because in the introduction you got Fireman Sam doing the thumbs up, and then it cuts to the title.
Yeah.
Right? I said at the very end, it's got to have Fireman Sam. He's going in his fire truck. He puts a thumbs up, freezes, and
Mhm.
then it fades to black. And when it fades to black, the classic Fireman Sam intro plays. Your song plays. I said that is
Okay.
it's got to happen. And I
Yeah.
went and at the third one I went. I did say I want Malpo to do the songs. I was like, I want Malpo to do the songs.
I'd do it on a drop of a hat. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I'm not sure they'll want to do it with CGI, and they'll want somebody.
No,
Yeah,
but it,
it was a great part of my life, and
yeah,
I still quite often, if I'm doing a concert in a place that nobody has any idea, which is most places, I usually start with a little story ending that song, and suddenly
yeah,
everybody goes, what? And I went to Cambridge University, right? And I went back after 28 years to my college, and I walked into the Fellows Garden, and the first sentence I heard was, "Oh, John, are you still at the Treasury?" And I thought, "Oh my gosh, I'm completely out of place here now. I was in 28 years ago, and I mean more now." And over the weekend, and there were people there who've been incredibly successful in all their jobs, but one by one, they all came up to me and said, "Did you really sing Fireman Sam?" I thought, is that all my life's going to be? But at least it's something, isn't it? At least it's something.
yeah. It would be funny if you turn on and went yes, and then one of them goes, "Oh, fuck off, no way."
It was on their faces, Reese. It was on their faces.
Yeah, it's like.
Are you looking for the perfect bracelet for a loved one? Would your man be interested in a personalised keyring from his children? Are you looking for the best priced jewellery, whether it be a necklace, ring, earrings, bangle, or even more? Look no further than Crafted Arts. Crafted Arts is a local business based in Barry within the Vale of Glamorgan, and they have a range of all the perfect items you need. If it's for the perfect gift for an anniversary, or maybe it's for someone's birthday, maybe something for Christmas, or you wanted to give someone that perfect gift that will last a long time, Crafted Arts is the business for you. If you want to know more or see what they have in stock, then you can visit them locally at 29 High Street, Barry, Vale of Glamorgan, CF627EB, or you can go onto their website at www.craftedarts.co.uk. You could even email them at info@craftedarts.co.uk, or maybe just give them a call at 07789 94248. Trust me, it's worth it for the perfect gift. The best thing about Creative Space is that we don't just want to encourage people in being creative in TV, film, or even theatre. We also want you to be creative in a variety of other things as well. So do you want to have experience in making jewelry? Do you want to pick up a hobby but do not know what to take or where to start? Then look no further than the Vale Jewelry Workshops. Vale Jewelry Workshops provides the best experience in teaching you how to make the best sterling silver jewelry. They will help you make a range of silverware, including rings, bracelets, and many more pieces. You will learn the basic silversmith skills such as soldering, texturing, shaping, and lots more. Not only do the workshops provide the experience for adults, it also provides the best experience and fun for children as well. So if you want to learn on how to make sterling silver jewelry, and if you're very interested, go onto their website at www.valegewelryworkshops.co.uk or get in touch with them via email at info@valegewelryworkshops.co.uk or even phone them at 07789 794248.
I was looking into coming into the late 70s and early 80s. I always wanted to know. So you signed with Elton John's management company, etc. And it was in 1982 that you started working for BBC Radio Wales as a researcher. What was going on during that period? So you signed with a management company, then you was going on a couple of years later to work as a researcher. So what was going on during that period for you then?
Okay, remember that thing I said about being broke?
Mm.
Uh, I was I was signed. I'd just left Rocket. I was signed to Harvey Goldsmith Management Company, 1979, publishing deal with EMI. Everything's going great, but I'm in completely the wrong time zone. So all of a sudden, music's moved on. 78, 79, punk has come in. I'm a singer-songwriter, and even though I've got the weight of Harvey Goldsmith, I mean, he at the time he was managing me, Billy Connolly, and Van Morrison. That's his
Mm.
roster. He's doing all these shows, but he's managing the three. And it was just the wrong time, wrong place. Well, wrong time, right place. And so I realized I was hitting my head against a wall. I was trying to make a living by playing in wine bars, playing covers in wine bars and restaurants, and it was heartbreaking.
Mm.
So I just thought this isn't working. I'd done some summer holiday stuff when I was in university. I'd done some work at the BBC, and they'd sort of intimated that there might be a job there as a researcher, and so I took him up on it. And so I came home, tail between my legs, wondering what I was going to do really. And the radio was a godsend. I loved it. I still do love radio. And I loved the whole process of putting. I mean, the first interview, I was working with a guy called Chris Stewart, who used to do the AM program, early morning program on Radio Wales. And my first job was, they said, this is a book is by a guy called Emlyn Williams. I'd never really heard of him. He'd written some place called Night Must Fall, The Corn is Green, and he'd been a real help to people like Richard Burton. And he'd been a major writer. And so the first, so I had to read the book, write out the questions, give them to Chris, go down to the studio, and I saw Chris interview Emlyn Williams with my words, and it was magic. And so I did that for a number of years, and I kept on bouncing back into music. It's hard, It's and it was a lot. In many ways, it's easier now, but it's more difficult for different reasons. But back then, making records was hard. I was still picking up the odd Radio One session. Met a guy called Larry Page, who used to manage the Kink and the Trogs, and he gave me a chance to become a musician again. I was like, was that 45? 84, 85. Yeah, 84, 85, something like that. And so I left the BBC. My wife was pregnant. My parents were devastated. They thought, what on earth are you doing? But I went back to being a musician, and then sort of bounced between broadcasting and making records then for the next sort of 20 years. But always the broadcasting paid the bills, whereas the music was like another shot, keep on giving it another shot.
Never give up, never give in.
Never surrender.
Never. I got to mention, there's one of the, I wrote it in red pen very quickly, and it's from the 90s to the early 2000s. There was a movement of Welsh culture going on, Cool Cymru, and you had bands such as Stereophonics, Super Furry Animals, Manic Street Preachers, and then you had films such as Twin Towns, Human Traffic, Solomon Ap Gaynor, and Heddwyn. I mean, that movement alone was trying to bring out Welsh culture, the Welsh language, out to the masses across the world. How did you feel during that period where Cool Cymru was becoming bigger and bigger and bigger? And what was your...
It was interesting because I was so at the time at 93 and 94 I had a big TV series on ITV, HTV Wales, and we had some amazing people on there, and we were starting to get. We had people like David Gray, who wasn't exactly Cool Cymru, but he was well. Anybody who was Welsh, we try our best to get them on alongside people like Cliff Richard, like who else? Go West, Paul Young. So they were the pop stars. They'd come down to Cardiff. They'd do their single, then they'd come and play with the band. So we had Misha Paris. Amazing guests. And HTV decided the show was too expensive, and they cancelled it. It's like one of those things you think, we've had some of the best people. We've had BAFTAs, we've had awards in New York, and he cancelling it. And they put on a cheaper show, which is their right. But 95, 96 would have been a great year to keep that show going. It was very much like Jules Holland's show. People got to play live, and it was great. So we missed out on that wave. I was doing radio at the time, so we did pick up on people like, I think Cerys Matthews and Catatoni did their first broadcast on an afternoon show that I presented. So we had a lot of people coming through then, but we missed out. I missed out personally as a broadcaster, because that's where I was by then. I wasn't really considered to be the musician. I was a broadcaster. And, the thing is, if we had given some of those people their opportunities on HTV, they'd have never forgotten it, because that was would have been the break. But it was great seeing it. I just felt a little bit sad that I wasn't really a part of it. And but it was amazing, that little period where, yeah, Cool Cymru. Yeah, it was.
Do you think there'll ever be another Cool Cymru?
Things come in cycles. That's the thing. It's like you never know when the next wave's coming. You just got to be ready. Luck is, was it preparation and being in the right place? Luck's a funny thing. You just have to keep on making your own luck. You have to keep on buying the lottery ticket, and if you don't, you definitely won't get lucky. So yeah, I mean, it's funny. People are always looking for the next new thing, aren't they? And sometimes the new thing is an old thing, just repackaged. So, well, that's my theory, and that's what I'm clinging on to.
Yeah. I mean, I was born in 1996, so I was born.
Oh, don't rub it in.
Don't. Wait, Mal, if you're going to see it straight away, right, there'll be grey hairs. There are grey hairs coming, and I'm 26, so and I'll be told. So, but I look back at it and I'm thinking, flipping heck, what a time to be just a Welshman. Just around that time, cool, because you had the Manic Street Preachers, you had Super Furry Animals, Catatonia, and then you had some of the films. And I just think to myself, man, that would have been great just to be in the moment. But then again, I was born in the Cool Cymru area, so I'm going to take that as my claim to fame. So
you saw Wales get into the World Cup. I mean, it is funny how different things represent our country. The music did for a while. The football's doing it now. The rugby used to do it in the 70s. And it's all, it's all another way to promote ourselves, to have an identity. I mean, I think the thing is, by the time Cool Cymru had happened, it was not that it's over, but you need to be there on the ground. You need to be there in TJs. You needed to be in those clubs where it was underground, and suddenly it gets found, and then it's become something different. So, in its success often comes its demise.
Do you have a story to tell in regards to maybe an experience you had with Manic Street Preachers or Super Furry Animals or anything like that? Is there a story that you always tell people?
Always tell people. I suppose I was asked by Patrick Jones, Nicky Wire's brother, to help on which disaster was it now? There've been so many of them. It was an event at the Blackwood Miners Institute, and I was hosting it. And I heard James Dean Bradfield sing just on his own with a guitar, and that was just fantastic. The guy, so it would have been, I don't know, early 90s, middle 90s, something like that, and he was fantastic. Maybe it's a Kosovan crisis, which one we've had. And I've got to know him a little bit. I don't know the Super Furries, just admire what they did. It was a different thing for me. I suppose I was a little generation above these guys, and I wasn't a cool Cymru. I was a singer-songwriter, and I was probably more American than Welsh. I remember my grandmother, when I used to go to lunch, and I remember now, none of that Yankee twang on my records, and she was probably right. But I look to the West Coast rather than to the Welsh valleys for my inspiration.
There was jumping head on when you're going into radio. You had your own little breakfast show. Actually, not little, it was a big breakfast show, and great show, but due to, what was it, budget costs or something like that, or the cutbacks? What was it?
What was it? Who knows? All you know is you get the call saying, "Thank you very much. It's been great having you on," and Mal's moving on to other projects. The first time it happens, it's devastating. First time it happened to me was 95, and I had 4 kids by then, and you don't see it coming. 2 TV series, actually 2 series a year I used to do at the time, and a radio program every day, and then all of a sudden within 6 weeks, both had gone, radio and TV, and you think, what am I going to do? But you either crumble. I during the time of doing the musical about the boxer Tommy Farr, I got to know Enzo Macronelli, who was the middleweight lightweight champion of the world, and his dad Mario. And Mario used to tell the story. He said, we all take a punch. He said, what happens when you take a punch? You go down on one knee, put your elbow on the ropes, you take the count until 8, then you get back up. And he wasn't talking about boxing, he was just talking about life, and it is hard when that, when you get that news that you're not wanted anymore, you're not needed anymore, and you haven't changed, but something has changed. It rocks your world. And you can't start too quickly. That's what I found. I think that's where Mario was right. You do need to take the count. You need to get your head clear again. So when the first thing happened to me was, I had an amazing bunch of musical friends, and we went out on the road. We did every pub and club up and down every valley, which was a fantastic experience. It was the first time I played live 3 or 4 times every night. It was playing other people's songs, we were playing covers. But, you know, it was a great experience. It was a terrific band. And then it led to all sorts of things. So we did a big event for Joan Collins and David Emanuel. And then we did Linda Lusardi's wedding. And then we did all these celebrity parties. Simon Mayer's birthday party. He was on Radio 1 at the time. And he actually gave up my home telephone number every day for a week, saying we were the band of the century, having played at his 40th birthday party. My phone just went nuts. And it was really weird because I realized then I either did it for the rest of my life playing other people's songs, or I had to kill it. And I did, because I didn't want to be a covers band. I mean, I don't mind doing covers, and I still love doing those songs. And with a band, we could do them at the drop of a hat. We click into club mode. But you have to survive, you know. And I always say I'm saving up for artistic integrity. It's all right. If you have any kids and you're living in a garret and you just got to feed yourself, you know, you can be as artistic as you like. But, you know, I've done lots of things. And I always tend to say yes to things rather than saying, oh, I don't know. I'll say yes. And you never know where it leads. Sometimes it leads nowhere. Sometimes it can take you around the world.
Any particular fond memories that you had with the shows that you've done on radio, in terms of any famous people that you remember speaking to on the radio, or where you're like, oh my God, you know, I spoke to so and so, or there was, you know, a moment that happened spontaneous where you're like, I was part of that moment.
Yeah.
Anything?
So I you know, I can reel off names. Great musical moments, playing Summer Holiday with Cliff Richard, George Melly doing Won't You Come Home, Bill Bailey, playing with the Bee Gees, you know, learning how to play. That's all fantastic. But I always tell a story about a guy called the Reverend Samuel Billy Kyles. And he came out of an ITV Wales program to go make a TV documentary about black gospel music and Welsh chapel music. And he meant going around the Deep South and writing a song everywhere outside, like Elvis's house and all those type of things. But I met this guy called the Reverend Samuel Billy Kyles. He was the man who invited Martin Luther King to Memphis for the garbage worker strike in 1968. He'd been with him the day before. He'd been to this meeting at the Masonic Hall in Memphis where Martin Luther preached like he'd never preached before. He said, I've been to the mountaintop. I've seen the promised land. I might not get there with you. The next day, he spent the afternoon in the Lorraine Motel with Martin Luther King and a guy called the Reverend Ralph Abernathy. Spent the afternoon with him. Jesse Jackson comes back from some meetings. Martin Luther King looks down and he says, you're not ready for dinner at Billy's house. Jesse Jackson says, but I'm wearing my appetites. And Billy goes to make the phone call to say they're all coming to the church for soul food because they didn't want to eat in restaurants. They wanted to eat soul food. And the shot rang out. He turned around, he saw his friend fall to the floor. I mean, that's like touching history. And I interviewed Billy every time I went to Memphis, and I went there for about 3 or 4 years. I'd go and see him and I'd ask him to bless me, and we'd probably do another interview for a radio program or a TV show. And he always said yes, because that was his role in life, was to be a witness to Martin Luther King giving up his life to support the garbage workers. And so that's the one I always talk about, is being the most incredible moment touching history.
There's a name I want to mention because it was because of this person that BBC Radio Wales had tragically lost, and it was Chris Needs.
Yeah.
Chris Needs. Tell us about Chris Needs. And
Chris was a one-off,
yeah,
as a person and as a broadcaster. And I mean, he was incredibly supportive of so many people. So what a lot of people don't know is, obviously, when COVID hit, all of his entertainment friends lost their work. He would ring me every week and say, how you doing? Are you all right? Can I give you some money? I'm going, I don't know. We're all right. He said, no, it's not a loan. I want to give you some money to get you through, because he knew that we'd all lost our work, and he did it for so many people. And then he wasn't very well a little bit, so I sat in for him, and I sat in for him in my garden shed where I am now. So I broadcast because it was COVID, and he kept on ringing. He said, I won't even tell Gabe. He said, he's not alone. Just give me your bank details. And then one Sunday afternoon, he rang me, and he sounded tired. He said, "Are you all right?" I said, "Yeah, I'm all right. Well, how are you, How are you, Chris Needs?" Because I always used to call him Chris Needs. And he said, "Oh, I'm okay. I'm okay." And he said, "Are you sure you don't want any money now?" I said, "I'm absolutely fine. You don't you worry." And a little bit later, I got a call from his producer to say he'd gone.
Mm.
The last thing I said, "I love you, Chris Needs." He said, "Love you, Malpope." And he was ringing up to see that if I and my family were okay, and he would have given me money to get us through COVID. He was a special man. He was a complex man, very funny, very naughty, but a great communicator, and that's why his show was so incredible. And I had to look after his show. In fact, it turned into maybe 18 months because of COVID. And it was an incredible responsibility because Chris took his role as a confidant very, very seriously. And I wasn't able to do that. I didn't feel comfortable about people tell you their deepest, darkest secrets and they want help. And I didn't feel quite able to do that. But Chris was a master at that and a master broadcaster.
Yeah, a terrific voice as well.
Oh, yes.
I mean, Chris Needs, because I mean, to be perfectly honest, when he passed away, excuse me, I mean, I'm not so much into my radio. I only got into my radio when I started doing podcasting a little bit more, just to get the feel in an idea of what some people approach to radio. And when the announcement of Chris Needs passing away, I was like, "Who's Chris Needs?" And my friend Tony Kelly Bennell just turned around and went, "Who's Chris Needs? Get on YouTube right now and listen to that man speak." And I just went, "Okay, no problem." Went on my phone and I just thought, "Bloody hell, that's Chris Needs." And and he went, "Told you."
Yeah.
Went,
Yeah. You know, as musicians, because you were doing late night gigs, you know, the only show on for most music, and a lot of people around the country as well, just Welsh musicians, you know, you'd be coming home at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, you'd put Chris on, and you wouldn't get out of the car to the end of it because it people thought it was scripted. The people who would come on his show, they thought it was like Gavin and Stacey. It wasn't. They were just everybody who came on the show was slightly crackers, but brilliant and great talkers. And they were talking to a friend, so it wasn't like they were on the radio. They were talking to Chris, like, and the conversations would go on like for 15 or 20 minutes, and they were brilliant. And he was able to do that, and without patronizing the people who were coming on, because he liked them. You know, he liked them, and he wanted to hear their stories, and that was a brilliant thing about him. He was, yeah, a master craftsman. Made it look easy, made it sound easy, and as you know, it's not always easy, you know, to keep a show like that going.
One last question for you then, Mal, before we conclude this podcast, is how do you look back on your career?
How do I look back? It's interesting, you know, I'm talking a lot about 1973, 1974 at the moment because it's the 50th anniversary. I'm putting out a lot of material from that time. Some of it I've just been given back by Rocket Records that was never released. The trouble was I'd record in 73 and by the end of 74 my voice had broken, so they couldn't release the record. We had to start again. And I'm thinking about, you know, this time 50 years ago I was sending a tape. 50 years ago I'm going to London. 50 years ago, and I like visiting the past, but I don't want to live there. And it's been an incredible journey. It's really, I think, really, and it's bizarre. It's only in the last sort of 18 months to 2 years that I've found myself as a musician, and I've done lots of different things. But you know, finding your own voice and your own sound is really interesting. When does it happen? It happens for some people very early on. And if you listen to because I'm releasing the John Peel sessions from when I was 13, I sound like a chipmunk. But they have an interesting style to them, and that probably was unique. But it's taken me until now to actually come up with a sound that really I feel is my sound. So I am living the moment, and I often tell the story that my Bible hero is Moses. Moses, I'm not sure you know the story of Moses. Moses was found in the bulrushes, taken in to the Pharaoh's house. He was prince of Egypt, and he ended up having to run away because he killed somebody. And he thought all his dreams were over, and he spent 60 years in the wilderness as a shepherd. And then he sees this burning bush. Back to Evan Roberts, so is a burning bush, and he gets commissioned to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt. You know, with Exodus, and you know he was 80 years old when he got his proper gig. You know, he'd had 60 years preparing for it. And if I've had more than 50 years in and out of the wilderness, learning how to do this job in lots of different ways, making records, talking to people, writing stuff. So if the moment arises, I'll probably be quite prepared for what the future might hold. It might not happen, and that's fine too. Because how do you measure success? Do you measure it in a bright star burning out, or do you measure it in being my age, still doing what I love every day, doing unusual things every day? Like today, we've launched a new anthem for the Diocese of Swansea and Brecon. I had to write an anthem for them. And, we're going to Prague to record the orchestra, be the Brecon Cathedral, to the choir and the organ. I've got some great friends on it. I mean, it's the stuff that I dreamt of doing when I was a kid, and now I'm still doing it. So I know I'm very, as Ken Dodd used to say, not lucky, blessed. I'm blessed.
Are you looking for the perfect bracelet for a loved one? Would your man be interested in a personalised keyring from his children? Are you looking for the best priced jewellery, whether it be a necklace, ring, earrings, bangle or even more? Look no further than Crafted Arts. Crafted Arts is a local business based in Barry within the Vale of Glamorgan, and they have a range of all the perfect items you need. If it's for the perfect gift for an anniversary, or maybe it's for someone's birthday, maybe something for Christmas, or you wanted to give someone that perfect gift that will last a long time, Crafted Arts is the business for you. If you want to know more or see what they have in stock, then you can visit them locally at 29 High Street, Barry, Vale of Glamorgan, CF627EB, or you can go onto their website at www.craftedarts.co.uk. You could even email them at info@craftedarts.co.uk, or maybe just give them a call at 07789 942 48. Trust me, it's worth it for the perfect gift. The best thing about Creative Space is that we don't just want to encourage people in being creative in TV, film or even theatre. We also want you to be creative in a variety of other things as well. So do you want to have experience in making jewellery? Do you want to pick up a hobby but do not know what to take or where to start? Then look no further than the Vale Jewellery Workshops. Vale Jewellery Workshops provides the best experience in teaching you how to make the best sterling silver jewellery. They will help you make a range of silverware including rings, bracelets and many more pieces. You will learn the basic silversmith skills such as soldering, texturing, shaping and lots more. Not only do the workshops provide the experience for adults, it also provides the best experience and fun for children as well. So if you want to learn on how to make sterling silver jewelry, and if you're very interested, go onto their website at www.valegewelryworkshops.co.uk or get in touch with them via email at info@valegewelryworkshops.co.uk or even phone them at 07789 794248.